Clara Daniels stood quietly at gate A17, her boarding pass trembling slightly in her hands. The terminal buzzed with the usual airport symphony, rolling suitcases, murmuring announcements, and the rhythmic shuffle of impatient travelers. She was dressed simply, a modest beige cardigan, a pair of well-worn jeans, and a travel tote stitched with her initials. Her hair was tied back in a loose bun, and the only jewelry she wore was a small gold band on her finger. She looked out of place in the first-class line. At least, that's what the flight attendant thought. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the woman said with a tight-lipped smile, blocking Clara's path. "This line is for first-class passengers only." Clara blinked in surprise. "I am flying first class." The attendant raised an eyebrow and scanned the ticket. "This must be a mistake," she muttered. Then, louder, "Please step aside while we sort this out." The people in line behind Clara sighed audibly. One man chuckled under his breath. A young couple exchanged amused glances. Clara's cheeks flushed crimson, but she held her head high. "I assure you, there's no mistake." Another agent joined in, whispering something to the first. They looked her up and down, clearly judging her by the simplicity of her appearance. "We'll need to verify this with a supervisor," the second one said curtly. And just like that, Clara was pulled out of line and made to stand off to the side, treated like an imposter in a place she didn't belong. What they didn't know, what they never even considered, was that Clara Daniels wasn't just flying first class. She owned the jet. Clara Daniels hadn't always been surrounded by wealth. In fact, most of her life had been built on humble beginnings. She worked at a diner for years, serving coffee with a smile and saving every spare penny. That's where she met James, a weary traveler in a wrinkled suit who tipped her more than the meal cost and stayed to talk about life. They fell in love over shared milkshakes and late-night walks. James had nothing back then but dreams and a worn briefcase. Clara didn't care. She believed in him, and that belief lit the fire that would one day make him a billionaire. Despite the success, Clara never changed. She still clipped coupons. Still called her mother every Sunday. Still rode coach when she didn't have to. But today, James had surprised her with a first-class ticket to Paris for their anniversary. "You deserve to fly like a queen," he had whispered, kissing her forehead. And yet, here she was, humiliated, disrespected, and dismissed, all because she didn't look the part. The situation escalated quickly. Clara asked calmly to speak to a supervisor, but instead of listening, the staff called security. A guard approached, hand on his belt. "Ma'am, we're going to have to escort you to a different area while we resolve this." People watched. Some smirked. A few looked away, pretending not to see. Clara's heart pounded. She wasn't angry for herself, but for every quiet, kind, unassuming person who had ever been judged for the way they looked. She reached into her tote and pulled out her phone. She didn't call a lawyer. She called her husband. 15 minutes later, the terminal froze. James Daniels wasn't just a billionaire, he was the majority stakeholder of the airline. And now, he was furious. He walked into gate A17 like a storm in a suit. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like steel. "Where is my wife?" Clara stepped forward. "James, I." But he had already seen enough. Her flushed cheeks. The tear she'd wiped away before it fell. The silent crowd that still hadn't moved. He turned to the staff. "Which one of you told her she didn't belong?" Silence. "Which one humiliated the woman who believed in me when I had nothing? The woman who helped build everything I have?" No one spoke. James looked at the supervisor. "You're all relieved of duty. Effective immediately." One by one, each staff member was escorted away, not with cruelty, but with a quiet lesson about respect. As Clara and James walked onto the plane hand in hand, the same passengers who once looked down on her now avoided her eyes. One elderly woman near the back touched Clara's arm gently and whispered, "I'm so sorry." That was wrong. Clara smiled. It's never too late to be kind. They took their seats in first class, not out of pride, but to prove a point. Appearances are deceiving, and true worth can't be seen in clothing, but in character. Epilogue. The story made headlines. Not because a billionaire got people fired, but because his wife forgave them. Clara requested that instead of being terminated, the airline staff attend empathy and hospitality training. They judged me because they didn't know better, she said in a statement. Let's help them be better. In a world obsessed with image, Clara Daniels became a quiet symbol of grace, humility, and the power of never forgetting where you came from. And from that day on, every airline staff member received a small card during training that read, "You never know who you're speaking to. So treat everyone like they matter, because they do." True class isn't about wealth or appearance. It's about kindness, humility, and standing up for what's right, even when you could easily walk away. And sometimes, the most powerful people in the world are the ones who say nothing, until they must.